How do you clean a traveller's notebook? This is a question I've seen pop up here and there from people who either spill something on a notebook or have other reasons for wanting to clean the leather cover of their traveller's notebook. In the traveller's notebook community, we love the patina that we get on these leather covers. And when someone asks how to clean the leather, I often see comments saying, just embrace the patina, it's all part of the journey. And while that is true, I do believe that there can be legitimate reasons that you would want to know how to care for your leather cover. And that may include a complete overhaul and a complete clean of the leather. So I have quite a collection of traveller's notebook covers, the oldest being just over 3 years old. So in my opinion, which may make me sound like a hypocrite, I don't think they need cleaning, as they are developing a really nice patina as I use them. So for this video I sought out some secondhand leather covers, which I wanted the most beat up cover that I could find. Unfortunately, everyone takes very good care of them generally. And I did only intend to buy these two, but I made the mistake of looking again and I ended up with a third one. But I think all three of these will show a great range of the issues you might encounter with traveller's notebook leather covers. So I'm intending for this video to be informative and helpful, so that if you ever do need advice on how to clean one of these covers, there is something here for you to refer to. So in this video, I'm going to talk about why you might want to or need to clean a traveller's notebook leather cover. We're going to look at the different types of leather in the traveller's notebook range. I'm going to talk about the tools and the method of cleaning and go over why each method is different for different types of leather. And then I'm going to look at each of these three covers and sort of give you an overview of the state that they are in, identify issues that I want to improve through the cleaning, and then of course I'm going to show you the method from start to finish, cleaning and drying and conditioning these leather covers. So the big question is, why would you want to clean a traveller's notebook? Many of us are drawn to using it because it develops a patina over time, and I know that some people do seek out secondhand covers specifically because they want it to already have a patina on it. So why would we want to erase that patina? And I know it can be quite controversial, and although the ethos of the Traveller's Company and the Traveller's Notebook is to embrace the patina and the wabi-sabi of it all, but I think by the time someone comes online and asks the question, they genuinely need help, and just saying, oh, you should embrace it and not care about it, they actually have come here because they care about it. And two things can be true at the same time. We can love the patina, but we can also want to clean the cover. There was a post on the Traveller's Notebook subreddit that actually triggered me into wanting to make this video. And it was someone asking about buying a secondhand notebook and how could they disinfect it. And of course there were some comments saying just to embrace it, but I can completely understand why someone might want to start fresh. These covers can be quite expensive, and maybe you will only be able to afford to buy one, and getting it secondhand can save you a little bit of money. But getting it secondhand, you don't get that fresh out of the box feeling, and maybe not everyone is okay with having something that has been handled by someone else. And that is especially true with these sorts of leather products where the patina is made from the oils in your hands. And just like a pair of leather shoes that I've bought secondhand in the past, I have given them a wipe down inside and out. I'm not funny about wearing shoes that someone else has worn, but I know some people might not be comfortable with it. And I think that is a completely justifiable attitude to have towards these leather products as well. Another reason you might want to clean the traveller's notebook is you might get a stain on it, and you've built patina over time, but maybe it's a stain you just can't live with. It might be from food or drink, it could be ink from your fountain pen, or it could be something that you just can't live with. So say your dog drags it outside through the mud, or maybe your cat has a little throw up on it. Like, those are things you don't have to live with. You can absolutely clean your cover. If something horrible happens to it, you can try and save it. Another great reason is you've had a traveller's notebook for a very long time, you've developed a deep patina on it, and maybe you just want to give it a nice good clean, condition the leather, and start again. I feel that there is a common misconception about conditioning the leather will take away the patina, but actually conditioning the leather means it will last longer, and because of how this leather is tanned, conditioning it can actually show even more scratches. And honestly, cleaning these covers is going to be part of their journey, and to me, you can do whatever you want with your traveller's notebook cover. Whether you clean it, whether you customize it, it's yours. So now we've talked about why you might want to clean one of these covers, let's take a deeper look at the type of leather that we're dealing with. And the best source of information for this actually comes in your traveler's notebook, and I'm sure many people open up a traveler's notebook and throw this piece of paper away, but it is actually very important, and it is simply called Care for Leather Items. And this also explains the dyeing process for the traveler's notebook, and there is a little bit more information on the traveler's company website about the leather process. I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but I do want to point out a couple of very important things that are noted here. The first line I think is the most important. The leather of Traveller's Notebook is finished with a natural dyeing method to make the most of leather's natural texture. And it is this tanning process that means you get scratches and scuffs and patina over time on the covers. So if you're familiar with other leather products like bags and shoes, those are finished in a very different way to the Traveller's Notebook. So you'll notice that if you have a pair of leather shoes or boots, they don't scuff up as easily as the leather covers do. And that is because they are treated differently. The more natural tanning process that Traveller's Notebook use means that they are softer and more flexible, but they're also more likely to get scratched and scuffed up. They do also make a note here that it shouldn't get wet, and that colour may transfer from the leather. So when we're cleaning the leather, we have to be mindful that we may see some colour transfer from these covers. For now, I'll put this to the side, but we will come back to it later. In the Traveller's Notebook range, almost all of the leather covers are the smooth, so that is the brown, the black, blue, olive, and the red, which was a limited edition in 2025. And then you have the camel leather cover, which is a nubuck finish. Some people will say it's suede, but suede actually has a longer nap, and I think that this is more of a nubuck style leather. Just as an example, this is one of my covers that I have used and has gotten a nice patina over time. And this is the smooth leather in the brown, and it will often be quite shiny out of the box. If you have bought the Kyoto blue cover or the Tokyo limited edition cover, you will have noticed that they have more of a matte finish, but I would still call this a smooth leather because it is not the same finish as the camel. So I would treat these in the same way that I will treat these brown covers here. This camel cover has quite a bit of patina, so it's lost some of that rough texture of the nubuck. If you're not familiar with nubuck, it does behave a bit like suede in that it has a nap. The best way I can explain nap is if you are familiar with velvet and you rub it one way and it goes dark and rough, and then you smooth it down the other way and it goes shiny. I can probably better demonstrate this on my camel passport. So if I brush up, you can see it darkens, and then when I push down, it sort of smooths it out and makes it a bit lighter. So that is why we will treat the camel differently to the smooth leather. You can of course apply leather conditioner to the camel to make it smooth, but today I want to clean it and I want to restore that nap and bring it back to life. So in terms of method and tools, for the smooth leather, I will be using the saddle soap. Now, I bought this to clean a pair of shoes and a bag, and I find that it is a very effective soap, and it is also quite conditioning. It's not too stripping to use on a leather like this, and I hope it will work well with this naturally tanned leather. Even on shoes and bags, I always use a natural bristle brush, because natural on natural I think is the best way. For a pair of leather boots, you might use a synthetic brush to buff up and shine it after you've cleaned it, but I don't really want to touch these covers with a synthetic brush. So to wipe down the covers after they have been cleaned, I will be using this cloth. It's just a soft cloth that I've used for shoes before. And then for the smooth leather, I will be conditioning them, and I will be using the recommended Renapur balm that I bought at Traveller's Factory while I was in Japan. You can use any sort of clear leather conditioner, so don't use one that has a colour because you are handling them with your bare hands, so I would not recommend using any kind of shoe polish. But any brand of like a clear, gentle cream conditioner I think will work well on these covers. So for the camel, which as we've discussed is a nubuck finish, I purchased a special cleaner which is for suede and nubuck, and this is also just referred to as a suede shampoo. You don't have to buy this specific brand, but I have used Saphir before for other leather cleaners. It can be quite pricey, but we want to love and care for our Traveller's Notebook, so if you do want to clean a cover properly, I'm hoping that this will work wonders on it. This suede shampoo also came with a little brush which has the natural bristles on it. but it is quite small compared to the brush I already have. So we'll see if we need to use it. And one thing that I haven't used before is this crepe brush. So this is a brush that is intended to be used with Suede and nubuck. And this weirdly shaped brush is meant to lift those fibers on the leather and raise them up so that it is revived. So I'm very interested to see how this finishes the camel leather cover. Of course, for all of these we will need some water, and I know on this little leaflet it says do not wet them, but in the process of cleaning we will need to wet the covers somewhat. Just don't submerge them fully in water, I think that is the main point. So ideally you would want distilled water, however I find it very difficult to find, so I have boiled some water and let it cool, and I just have a couple of little pots which I will put some water in to use to clean the covers. So that is all of the tools that I will be using to clean the covers. So let's take a closer look at these covers and identify the areas that we want to improve through cleaning. So first is the camel cover. Now this one has been heavily used, and there are certain things that I'm hoping that will improve after cleaning. You can see that there are a couple of stains on the leather, so I'll be interested to see if they lift up with the shampoo. Also, you can look at the top and the bottom of the cover and you can see there are these lines and these sort of grooves in the leather, and that is because the previous owner used the elastic vertically as opposed to horizontally like we usually use it. So I'll be interested to see if any of these sort of grooves lift up when we use the Suede brush. And just generally, here is a closer look. You can see that the oils in the hands have darkened the leather. There are still some areas which are a bit lighter or scratched up. And this is just what happens to the nap of the nubuck leather with heavy use. You can see especially up here it's quite shiny. And that is a patina that many people aim for with the camel cover. So I'm really interested to see how this one changes. And just to have a look at the inside, there is an inner pocket which I have not yet removed. I'm in two minds about cleaning the inside of these notebooks. Definitely I will do them at different times because I don't want both sides of the cover to be wet at the same time, but I might need to clean the inside of this one to try and remove the adhesive for this pocket. Also, just to note, I'm not going to be restringing any of these notebooks. We're just going to be cleaning them today. I think the elastic in all three of them seems to be okay, and I also have a kit that only has 2 tin clasps, so I can't actually restring 3 of them. And I might save that for another video. So in terms of this camel cover, what I'm looking for is what happens to the stains if we get a lighter finish after shampooing and using the crepe brush on the nubuck. And I really don't have very high expectations for any of these covers. I'm just interested to see how it turns out. I will make one note about this cover. The other two didn't arrive with any sort of scent. However, this one did come with a very light scent. And so thinking back to that person who wanted to disinfect a cover that they bought secondhand, I can fully understand why you might want to do that, because if you receive something secondhand, it may smell like it's come from someone else's house, which it has. And this doesn't smell unpleasant, but it does have a light scent. So hopefully in cleaning it, it may lift that scent a little bit. I did leave this lying out to air out and it still smells a little bit. So we'll see what happens. The second cover that I purchased secondhand is this passport brown cover. And I think it's in very good condition. It has a light patina, but I think the main thing is that it is a little dry. You can see in the spine of the cover that it has lost quite a bit of oil there. And also this is quite common. People ask if this dryness is normal. It 100% is, because you're bending the leather, and so more of that leather is exposed to the air and the oils pull out of the leather, which is why you have a more wrinkly and a more dry looking spine on the covers, and this is with all of my covers. I think this cover is also quite useful in demonstrating some aspects that they do explain in the little insert in your new cover. It says, the leather may have uneven colour, small scratches, blood vessel streaks, wrinkles and moles from the original skin. And I know some people open up a new traveller's notebook and ask if it is faulty because it has a scratch on it or maybe it has a wrinkle. And I don't know if you can see it, but there is sort of a line here across the leather, which is just the natural grain of the leather, and I think a bit of a wrinkle in the skin. And it is also, I think, a bit on this side. You can sort of see this effect. Now, cleaning is not going to remove this. It is part of the leather, and that is part of the way that we embrace the natural form of the leather. But I think cleaning and conditioning this leather will just mean that these sort of wrinkly bits are hydrated and they'll be a bit more supple. This cover is also quite stiff, so I think it has sort of sat around for a bit, and so by cleaning it and conditioning it, hopefully it will get a bit more soft and supple like my other brown covers. So my main aim for this cover is conditioning, and I don't think we'll see too much of a colour change. Maybe the colour will deepen when we condition it, but if it is quite dry, it will sort of suck up all of that conditioning and we may end up with a similar colour in the end. Now, I had already bought the other two covers and was very happy to use those two for this video, but I made the mistake of looking again and I saw this cover. And this cover was a little bit cheaper than the other two, and I think for good reason. It does need a lot of work, and I don't know if you can tell, but it is very, very dry. Compared to this brown that I have, you can see how light it is, and it just needs a lot of love. If you look on the page about leather care on the Travelers Company website, they do mention that there may be some white powder on the cover of the notebook when you receive a new one. I've never experienced that with any of my new covers, but I think what we're looking at here is that blooming of the oils on the top of the leather. So I think that this cover has sat in a cold climate and unused for a very long time. It is very stiff and you can see this sort of white powdery substance on the cover. And it could also be mildew or mold, but from looking at it, I think it is most likely that it is just very, very dry. Now, this arrived in a canvas pouch, which was actually quite dirty, and I threw it away immediately. But you should always store these covers in that canvas pouch that they came in so that they can breathe. And you can see here on the inside there's quite a lot of this blooming. So this one I may clean inside and out. There's also quite a big indent from the elastic, and I think that is just from being in storage for quite a long time. And it is also just very, very stiff. So I really want to clean and condition this one. It might need a couple of goes with the conditioner, but hopefully this one will have the best transformation. So now that we have reviewed the three covers, let's get into cleaning them. I will probably now speed up the footage and do a voiceover explaining what I'm doing, because I really want to focus on cleaning these. So starting with the passport size brown leather, I'm wetting the brush and making a lather up on the saddle soap using the natural bristle brush, and just working it gently into the cover using circular motions, making sure that there's not too much water on the brush and that it is getting into every nook and cranny of the leather. I also made sure to pick up the tin fastener here just to make sure that I get underneath it, and you can already see on the paper towel there's a little bit of transfer of the leather dye. So I'm using the paper towel just to remove the soap from the leather, and I'm trying to be as gentle as possible, but there is some colour transfer. It is very difficult to tell whether this is dirt, depending on how dirty the cover is, or if it is just purely the dye. But no matter how gently you clean these covers, you're going to get some dye transfer. I didn't really need to go in with a second go with a soapy brush, but I did it and we learn. I think this cover wasn't that dirty or didn't need this much cleaning to begin with, so I wouldn't recommend going in a second time. But I did do this sort of rinsing brush with a completely clean brush and a little bit of water just to make sure that all the soap was gone, and then did a very good pat dry with the paper towel. I think that this drying stage is very important. You want to pat dry as much of that moisture out of the leather as possible, just so that when it is drying flat, it doesn't take as long and it's quite a quick drying process. So this is what it looks like after it's just been cleaned, and there's a little residue on the paper towel, but we'll put this aside to dry. So I laid down some fresh paper towels so that we could move on to doing the regular brown cover. I followed the same process, working up a lather on the brush and then applying it in a circular motion, and this one I did it as gently as the last one as well, but paying particular attention to those areas where the oil had lifted up and there was a white cast on the leather. Because there's a bigger surface area on the regular size cover, I cleaned one side and wiped it off with the paper towel before moving on to the second side, just because I didn't want the soap sitting on the leather for an extended period of time. I don't know if it does anything, but this is just my personal preference of how to work with it. Turning it around to the other side, I repeated the process, and even with this little bit of moisture, the leather is already starting to feel so much softer to touch, so I'm really excited to see how this one turns out. Again, I removed the soap with a paper towel, and then I took my brush to rinse it off so I could come back and do just a light wash just with water over the cover and pat it dry just like I did with the passport size cover. On this side, I do feel that I applied a little bit too much water, so I just made sure to dab it dry with the paper towel as thoroughly as I could. I also realised that there was a bit of soap stuck in the debossing where it says Traveller's Notebook, so I made sure to pay a little bit of extra attention to that. And as I was patting it dry, I realised that there was a bit of soap stuck in the little elastic hole, so just make sure that you wipe that out as well, and look at how flexible this leather is looking already. It's amazing. So I'll set this aside to dry and we'll get on to our third cover. So I actually wasn't filming when I started cleaning the Camel cover, so here is how I started. The directions for using the Suede shampoo says to dilute it. There are no exact measurements, so I just eyeballed it with a little bit of water in the container, pouring the shampoo into there, and I grabbed the brush and gave it a little superficial mix. So using the same method as the other covers, using the Suede shampoo, I worked in circular motions on the cover. But you will notice a difference to the other covers is that I have covered the entire surface in one go, and that is just what I have seen demonstrated by other people cleaning shoes, is that if you're working with Suede or nubuck, you want to apply the shampoo to the entire surface before doing a brush over rinse with just water and then dabbing off the excess moisture. It can be quite daunting to see your Suede or nubuck item turn a completely different colour as it is darkened by the shampoo and the water, but as we will see, it all comes together, so you just sort of have to jump in and trust the process. I removed as much of the moisture as I could and then looked over it and made sure that I was happy with how it looked, and then set it to the side to dry like the other covers. So this is what the covers look like after they've had 24 hours to dry. So let's take a closer look at each cover and see what the cleaning has done to them. So starting with the passport brown leather cover, we can see that some of the colour has lifted during the cleaning process, and I maybe didn't pay enough attention to some of the areas where I can still see a bit of shininess where oil remains. My goal wasn't to strip it completely, I just wanted to gently clean it, but maybe going in for that second round with soap on the brush lifted a little bit too much. However, I wasn't too worried at this stage because I know that the conditioning balm can really deepen the colour of the brown, so this is just where we are, and this might be where you end up as well, so hopefully it's helpful to see how this could turn out. Next, let's take a look at the regular size brown cover, and we can already see a marked improvement. That white cast of the oils pulled to the surface has been removed, and it's already shining a lot better than it did before. There are still some little spots on the leather, but I don't think those can be removed by cleaning. But I'm really impressed with how this has transformed from where it was just a day ago, and it is feeling quite a lot more supple and flexible in the hands, and it's just a lot nicer to hold. And finally, here we have the Camel, and you can see it is so much lighter than before, so you don't need to be scared when you're cleaning it and it gets dark from the water and the shampoo, because this is what it looks like after 24 hours of drying. We haven't completely removed all of the dirt that's in the nubuck Suede, but you can see at the top that the lines from the vertical elastic have softened a little bit. They haven't gone completely, but I think it is quite different from what it was before. And here's a closer look at the back. The stain on the back here is still there, but I'm really happy with how this has turned out. And I'm really excited to test out the crepe brush just to see what it will do to this nubuck leather which we have freshly cleaned. So I let these dry for another day, so 48 hours later this is what the covers look like, and we're ready to condition and treat them. So again we're going to start with the passport cover, and we're going to use the Renapur leather balm to bring it back to life. I picked up this kit at one of the Traveller's Factory stores in Japan, and it comes with a little thing of the balm as well as a sponge with which to apply it. And you can see there's a little bit of red on there because I did use it when I received my Love and Trip red cover because it had a little bit of a scratch on it which I buffed out. So using the balm, you take a very small amount, and I initially started using it with the soft cloth, but it actually left some fibres which I wasn't too happy with, so I did end up using the sponge for the rest of the process. You do only need a little bit, a little goes a long way, so don't waste it and make sure that you use it bit by bit, making your way over the leather cover evenly and making sure you don't leave too much of a build-up of the product. The process is actually very quick, so if you haven't cleaned your cover and it's looking a bit dry and you only want to condition it, it will take you maybe 5 minutes maximum, and then you just want to leave it to dry so that you don't have any residue coming off on your hands and you let the balm sink all the way in. I left these for about 24 hours after conditioning before I handled them again. It's up to you, but just see how they go, and you can also determine whether they need a second coat of leather conditioner. So here I'm just having a look over it. You can see how deep the colour has gotten from conditioning it, and I decided to go back in and give a little bit more attention to the spine, as this can be the driest part of a traveller's notebook leather cover. As I mentioned before, because of the exposure to the air where the leather is bent, the oils can pull to the surface more quickly. And using the sponge, I was just making sure that everything was evenly coated and I was ready to set it aside to dry. So next we'll move on to conditioning the regular size brown cover. I'm just having a look here to see if there are any areas that I need to pay extra attention to. And using the same method, I'm applying the Renapur balm using the sponge and just working in small sections, going over this larger surface area. And because this one was so dry before we cleaned it, I wanted to make sure that I applied as much balm as possible without coating it too thickly. But you can already see it's starting to look glossy and hydrated, and she's having a massive glow up here. So it's really exciting to work on a cover like this and to just see the changes that can be made with a few simple steps. So I like working in sections, as you can see, and I'm going to do the exact same method to the other half on the back of the cover. As with the last cover, I made sure to pay special attention to the spine here and made sure to go around the elastic at the bottom and the tin fastener at the top. You may notice that I'm dipping into the pot of conditioner a little bit more frequently, and that's because I wanted to make sure that there was a good layer on this one because it had been so dry before. And here you can sort of see the lines of where I have applied it. I didn't do a final brush off like I did on the passport size, just because I wanted the conditioner to sit on the surface and really soak in overnight. And finally, we're going to get to work on the Camel cover. So this is what it looks like after 48 hours of drying. It doesn't look too much different from the day before, so that light amount of moisture on it has really dried off very well. We're going to use the crepe brush, and this is my first time using it on anything. So it was a little bit of a learning curve, but I watched a YouTube video about it, much like you're watching this one. And it looked like the best method was to gently rub the brush side to side across the surface of the leather. You may notice on the brush that you get a bit of colour transfer, and this could be dirt, but it could also just be a little bit of that fibre coming off onto the brush, which is why you want to work with it very gently. I did find that lifting it off the flat surface of my desk allowed me to maneuver the leather a little bit better under the brush, but you just find what method works for you. And I'm going to have to speed this up even more because it does take quite a bit of time, but you just have to have patience and you will be rewarded. And here at the halfway point, you can see the difference between the front of the cover and the back of the cover with and without the Suede brush treatment. I think using the crepe brush made the nap a little bit more pronounced than when you buy a Camel cover brand new. It acts a bit more like Suede. So if this is a texture that you're actually looking for on your Camel cover, or maybe you want to try and convert one of the smooth leathers, you could try using a crepe brush like this. Also, just for reference, this is the comparison with my fairly new and slightly handled Camel passport cover. So again, I'm just repeating the process on the back of the cover, and maybe for something like this you might want to cut the elastic in the middle, just because I found it a little bit hard to go around it and the tin clasp at the top. But I would say it's not completely necessary and you can make do with what you have. It was also quite hard to tell when it was finished, and it might still not be finished, but I just got it to a finish where I was happy with it, and also I was a bit tired from having to use the brush for so long, so I was like, this is good. Because the crepe brush had made a more pronounced nap, I decided to take this little brush that had come with the Suede shampoo, just to brush the nap down in a single direction, as the crepe brush did leave some lines which I didn't particularly like. I think with the more pronounced nap, even using the natural bristle brush, it leaves a few brush marks, but I think that's just what you're going to have to deal with, and once you start handling it, those brush marks will disappear. So here's a look at what I think is the final product, and it is very Suede-like. You can see even just touching it with my fingers is moving the nap and giving you a sort of instant patina almost. So this is where we are after treating the covers. You can see the regular size brown and the passport size brown look very nourished and are feeling a little bit more flexible. And I'm going to just leave these for another 24 hours just to let it all soak in, and then we'll come back and have a look at them again. So it's now been another 24 hours and I've let the conditioner sink into the smooth covers. So I just wanted to show you how they've sort of soaked that in. You can see that it has soaked in really nicely, and I'll sort of leave it a bit to see if I decide to do another conditioning, but I think that both of them look really, really good. And with some handling, they will just keep improving. And with the Camel, the more I touch it, the more little scuff marks you see coming up, and this will be really interesting to see how it develops over time. I said that I wouldn't restring the insides, but I am going to give them all new closing elastics, just because the ones that they had were all a little bit old and were feeling a little bit stiff. So I do have the repair kit with the spare colours, but as you can see, I also have a lot of spare elastics from the other Traveller's Notebooks that I have purchased. So I'm going to choose from one of these and put one in each of these covers. I also thought it would be useful to see some side-by-side comparisons of the before and after of the covers. So you can see such a great improvement for all of the three covers. And I also took them outside to take some pictures out in some more natural daylight. So this is on an overcast day. So here's the Camel in front and back. And then the brown regular size as well, which I think just looks so much better from where we started from. And here I've actually been using the brown passport size for just over a week as my wallet. So it's got some nice scratches on it already from being in my bag with my keys and getting scratched by my rings when I reach in for my phone. And earlier when I said that conditioning the leather can bring up the scratches even more, this is what I mean. It's starting to look so used so quickly and I love it. So now that we have finished treating these covers, I just want to give you some final thoughts on the process and the outcome. So my main takeaway is do not be afraid to clean and treat your leather covers. It was a little bit scary seeing how much colour came off them when I was cleaning them, and you don't really know how much of it is dirt or how much of it is actually the leather dye. For the outcome, I think it's absolutely worth it. And of course, with the smooth leather covers, when you condition them, they will darken up again, and actually Passport one I think has darkened up even more than I thought it would when it had that sort of lighter patch in the middle. So I'll be interested to see how this cover develops over a lot of handling and going in and out of my bag. I was also a little bit apprehensive about using that crepe brush on the nubuck Suede Camel, but I think it's actually come out really great and actually has a bigger sort of shift in the nap than it used to. And again, if I use this one frequently, it would be interesting to see how quickly it might revert back to how it was before. I don't think I would then clean it again, but as I mentioned before, maybe if you are buying secondhand, you just want to start from something fresh. And I think using the crepe brush to revive the nap in the camel leather is a great idea, and if you like how it's come out for me, then hopefully you will have similar results. I think if I was to do this again, I might use the crepe brush before shampooing the leather, as I do feel there are some patches where there might still be sort of dirt embedded into the cover. But this was all just an exercise in experimenting and seeing what happens when you clean these covers. Of course, the greatest glow up is the regular size brown. It came to me very, very dry, and I cannot believe just how beautiful the leather looks after I have cleaned it and conditioned it. One thing I would take away from these secondhand notebooks is if you are looking to store a traveler's notebook cover long term, I would recommend removing the securing band. The Camel one came with the band vertically, and it was really pulling on the leather and causing a lot of marking to happen to the leather where it was quite tight. And then for this one, which had clearly been in storage for a very long time, you can still see the marks from where the band was too tight and was maybe just in storage for a bit too long. If you are going to retire your traveler's notebook for a little bit, please remove these bands. I would say take them out completely, don't just leave them like this, because if you put them into the canvas pouch, this will just end up marking the leather where it sits tightly against it. And actually another great point is that the canvas pouches that these covers come in, keep them, because they are meant to be used for storing them. The leather needs to breathe, and if you want to avoid any sort of mildew or mold, do not store them in like a plastic bag. Put them into their canvas bag and store them somewhere where it's not airtight. It may seem counterintuitive, you may think that putting them somewhere airtight might preserve them for longer, but they really do need to breathe, so don't put them into a Ziploc bag, and check on them maybe every few months just to see if they need a bit of conditioning. So I hope this video has been useful and informative, and please do let me know in the comments if you have any questions about cleaning these leather covers. I'm not a complete expert, but I have some experience now. I think it would also be interesting to clean the other colours of the leather, as I don't know how the olive, the blue, the red or the black would respond to the saddle soap and the conditioning. I feel like they might be a little bit scarier with the colours that may come off them, but hopefully this video gives you a little bit of confidence to clean any traveller's notebook cover. So I hope this video has been useful and informative, and if you have been wanting to clean your own traveller's notebook cover, maybe this gives you the inspiration to give it a go. If you have enjoyed this video, please do subscribe. I make a lot of videos about traveller's notebook and stationery, and thank you so much for joining me on this journey to clean these covers, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon.